I would like to welcome you, Nela, to our Ask Her Anything, our AHA Conversation series. Um, I'm Kelly, and I am the founder of Athena Village. Nela found us, we just discovered, through Lisa Sonora, she actually was the first online course I ever took was from Lisa. And I met Joy Akange, who is one of our main collective members at Lisa's retreat, gosh, in 2010, a long time ago. So we have that in common. And now that you tell me that, Nela, I see Lisa's influence in the pieces you shared in the village. I'm excited to hear about your creative process and excited to hear how you began and how you got the courage to actually turn something into a book. So I will just do a brief introduction about who you are. You are a visual communications designer. You're in Croatia, and tell me which city you're in.
It's called Rijeka. It's on the northern coast in Croatia.
You've got about 18 years of experience, and you are building brands and digital platforms for mostly small businesses. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah. I do work with nonprofits as well, and I have different types of clients, but mostly small businesses, like micro businesses, 5 to 10 people at most. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. You own a boutique branding company, consultancy, which is called Nela Dunato Art and Design. And you really are committed to making sure that the humanity of that brand and the individuals that are working within that brand come forward. The beauty and the heart basically comes forward when you're working with those individuals. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, you got it right. Yeah,
Okay.
that's really important to me because, everybody online and in business, they just want to be seen as they are. They want their people to find them. And I think I do have a knack for kind of, finding the visual that kind of encapsulates the person's, values and uniqueness. So yeah, that's kind of a talent, you might say, or a skill that I developed, and I'm really happy that I could use it in this way.
And that's so important. So tell us a little bit about your journey, how you began and kind of found this niche for yourself.
Well, it was a winding journey, but yeah. Well, I was one of those kids that always enjoyed creating art, all different kinds of art. So, visual art, writing. I did also play some music. So, always interested in creativity and crafts. And I think I always wanted to do something like that professionally, but because of the age when I was growing up and the place where I was growing up, I didn't really know what those avenues would be because you don't really see those jobs on television. You don't see them in the media. I didn't know anyone who was a designer or a visual artist. No one in my family was everybody was creative, but everybody had a different kind of job, the let's say non-creative kind of job. And so I was kind of I had these hobbies all of my life, but when I was in high school I was preparing to go to engineering school because I thought that I was supposed to do that because I was good at math. I was good at computer engineering, things that were kind of, we might say, profitable and useful and that had a lot of prospects. So that was kind of my goal. But what I realized when I actually went studying engineering that I didn't enjoy it, that I wasn't really motivated to study, and something kept pulling me to design, to creativity, to visual arts. And I started making my first websites when I was, I think, in first grade of high school. So that was about age 15. And I kept doing that. And I didn't think that was anything impressive. Like that was just a hobby that I had. And a lot of kids my age had. I met teenagers and like tweens from all over the world, from United States, from Vietnam, from like Singapore, like Middle East, like people, Australia, like we were uh, pen pals online and had our little forums where we gathered. And so that was kind of the thing that nerdy kids did at the time. And very few of those kids actually pursue that as a career.
Mhm.
But a couple of us, we actually thought, okay, so people are interested in paying us to do design. So my first colleague in engineering school, he heard that I know how to make websites. So he said, "Oh, I have a business. Will you make a website for me?" I'm like, "Sure. What are you paying?" And so that was my first client, and that's kind of how it started. I started, like, people online were just reaching out to me, interested in designing their websites, because not a lot of people actually did that professionally at the time. Very few people actually had that skill because it was rather new. So I broke into design that way, like kind of sideways, without attending art school or having any kind of a that kind of experience that would kind of make it maybe easier. But I ended up spending more and more time devoting to learning design. And so less and less time on my engineering studies until I found like a permanent job. And I said, okay, I'm going to quit school because this doesn't make any sense. I'm just wasting my time here. I'm not going to graduate. And even if I did, that diploma wouldn't really help me in this career. So that's how I started with the design career in earnest. And I kept doing that for the past, so like 18-ish years. It was 2005 when I started freelancing for the first time, and then had a couple of agency jobs. And then in 2013, I started my own studio. And since then, I've been working on my own as a freelancer, but collaborating with other professionals on projects. Like, I don't have any kind of permanent team, but I do come together with other people if a project requires like more of us to work together. So that's been really great. And the other part, the writing and the art, has just always been with me. I've always been doing that on the side, we might say. And occasionally I do publish something. Occasionally, I have an art show, or publish a book. But it's not like my main focus. But I do think it's something that is a permanent part of my life. It's just something very rewarding. So I'm gonna keep doing that.
Do you like working by yourself?
Well, I do like working by myself. I do find a lot of my projects are like one-on-one with a client. So we have this um, we gather, we exchange information, I do some consulting and so on. And then I like to sit down and really focus. And I'm more of a hermit, although I did work in teams, and I do occasionally like to come together to work on a project. Especially, I worked on a lot of nonprofit projects as a part of a team. So those are usually kind of bigger and do require more people collaborating together. So I do like to, do a bit of this, a bit of that. But if I'm say I'm more comfortable working on my own, and then I've always been comfortable working from home. So, now working from home is new for a lot of people, but I've been
Yeah.
doing that since the early 2000s. So it's nothing new. I enjoy that. It's kind of my safe space.
I'm wondering, Nela, how do you work with clients all over the world, or how do you promote your business?
Thank you. Yeah, I do work with clients all over the world. I did work, so I mean, all over the world it's a bit of a, I did work
Yeah.
with clients in the United States, in Australia, in Sweden, in the UK, and countries surrounding my country. I do have a website that I've had for a long time, which I write a lot of articles on. So that, I think, is the most helpful thing to promote my work, is to have a lot of helpful resources that people just stumble into as they're researching the topics that have to do with what I do, my services. So that's been really helpful. And also, I do meet people on social media, like especially LinkedIn. And I did use some Facebook groups that are specifically for entrepreneurs. where there's a lot of discussion. So somebody asks a question and kind of provides some information. Although that hasn't been as effective for me personally. I do find that for me, the content that I publish has been more effective long term, because you write it once and it's there, and if Google picks it up as a valuable resource, then it keeps driving people to you the whole time. So I do have a website that's in English and I have a website that's in Croatian. So I have potentially like two different avenues where people can find me. And then I also do speak at conferences, and I did some podcast interviews. So a bit of everything really, but it's been a long time. So I launched my own business 10 years ago. So that's everything that I've been doing. I've started with articles first, social media, and then I added on these other things like speaking and interviews on podcasts that have to do with where basically I expect my audience to be. So it's a lot of that is planned, but a lot of it is also organic. I simply meet people in various places, somewhere unexpected. And then they reach out to me maybe 5 years later on, when they remember that they need something that I do. So there's a bit of a plan and there's a bit of like thought put into it. And there's also a bit of serendipity and just finding yourself in the right place at the right time, which I think it's a lot more rewarding sometimes when you don't feel like you're pushing too hard, but things still happen. And simply because the other person is ready for this at this very moment.
Well, and that brings me to a question that when you were writing about your creative process in the village, you alluded to kind of changing how you did your work, especially on this second book. Now, your first book was specifically about branding. And tell us about how your creative process changed for the second book. And did it have to do with like the pandemic and how things changed? Can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yeah, well, the first book was essentially started off from an idea that I had for a class. So initially I wanted it to be a class, but a lot of the material I already had written in the form of blog posts. So it was something that I was writing about all the time for my blog. And it was really aimed at, my audience, like who do I want to help? Who do I want to work with? What do people need who, maybe cannot afford to hire me, but they want to do this by themselves? So what would such a person need? What can I give them through the book that they can do on their own? And so I was very focused on this how-to process. I was very focused on information. So, the book, I have a copy here. So this is like 300 pages. It's a thick book. I call it it's a guidebook. It's like a class in a book essentially. And so I worked through it very methodically. I had like a plan with chapters, like Post-it notes, and everything was very structured. And I had an editor who helped me on structural editing. So it was like it was a laborious process. It was also, how I thought books should be written. And I do think when you're writing a very like a book that's based on a professional topic or even a scientific topic or something like that, I think that is the correct approach to use, because then you make sure that you include all the information you need. I included lots of references. I'm very insistent that when I hear like a statistic that people are repeating, I want to research, is that statistic actually true? Where does it come from? Who published it first? And so on. So I was very meticulous in that way. And I mean, writing it took a long time because I was writing it on and off. But overall, I think a year and a half just to write and edit the manuscript. So that was the first one. And the process was very intense and sometimes very tiring. And the other book was kind of more just spur of the moment inspiration. And I believe probably the pandemic did have something to do in that I didn't have a lot to do in my work at the time because everybody was like saving money. Nobody wanted to invest in branding at the time. And thankfully I had enough savings that it didn't make a problem for me financially. But I did find myself with a lot of time on my hands, and I did teach some classes, I did some consulting, but basically my workload went way down. And then I was thinking about, I wanted to be writing something, I wanted to be teaching something, but I was kind of tired of teaching about this professional topic that I was known for, because I could talk about branding all day, all night long, but I do get bored occasionally of just talking about one thing. I have other interests as well. I have other personality sides to me, and then so the page, I think I even quoted that in the post that I shared. I was like, what do I want to teach? And there was writing all the things that I don't want to teach this, I don't want to teach that, I don't want to teach techniques, I don't want to teach, so many other things that people are interested in. I know there would be an audience for that, but I'm not the person who wants to provide it, because I'm like, I'm done with it. I did it all years ago, and I want something different. I want something new. I want something that's also going to be rewarding for myself. And so I started I wrote the title called Teaching by Example. And it's like a journal entry, so I was just free writing, and that's also something that Lisa Sonora taught us in our workshops, and something that I kept doing. And it's really helpful, just free writing, just asking yourself a question and then writing whatever comes up. And then I started writing these things that are like principles. So I think I put my sketchbooks here because I want to, they are a big part of my process. And I think that one of them was create regularly. And then there was create for yourself. And then there was listen to inspiration, not advice. And so I came up with these, initially there were like 8 of these like principles. And then that's the page. Yeah. It's in Croatian. So some is in Croatian, some is in English. So it's a little difficult to understand sometimes. But then I connected all of these principles to like a word, like a quality, or what I call like a key. So, create regularly, that's a commitment. And create for yourself, that's authenticity. And so all of these principles, I kind of connected to some of these very important key themes. And I realized, wow, this actually looks like an outline for a book. And then I went to create those other pages, which are very colorful. So for each of that pages, I'll
share the screen with.
Yeah, I mean, I have a camera here. So these are like, these are a couple of pages like that. So I went on to create, like, each chapter is like a spread of 2 pages. And so that's how I created the outline of the entire book, essentially as these spreads in my sketchbook. And I was doing a lot of that while I was outside sitting in front of my house, or while I was lying in a hammock on a beach. So just having a lot of these time to think and process, and just pouring stuff without researching. So I was like, I'm not going to do any research for this book. This is the book that's just coming from my heart. I think I've read plenty of books. I know a lot of it, all the classics, and I can write something, without referencing anyone else's things. And so that's how I came up with this outline. And then I sat down and I wrote the manuscript, which was quite short compared to the other one. So the text is just about 50 pages, but I wrote it. So I created this whole outline and wrote the manuscript within like a month. So completely different to the previous book, which was like a year and a half.
So is your book published?
No, it's not published yet. So I'm currently, I'm working on illustrations, which ended up being a more labor intensive process than I anticipated. I thought I was going to be like done by the end of that year, but it's going on and off. So I'm kind of trying to I would try to shop it around with some publishers first to see if there is any interest. And then if there's not, then I'll do the self-publishing route the way I did the first one. But I wanted to create this, a complete manuscript first, to have it really visually the way that I imagined it, because I have it in my head. I know what I want it to look like. And I'm really trying to get it to that point, at least a couple of chapters before I can shop it around and see if there's someone who might be willing to take that on. And then if not, I always have a plan B, a plan C. It's the book is going to come out one way or another. That currently my hang up are the illustrations, because they take a specific kind of feeling. They require a specific kind of mindset and time, because I like to do them in one sitting. I don't like to drag them on for like a week. I like to take the time and just do over 1 or 2 days, one illustration. And sometimes when I work and I teach, it's been difficult to kind of getting myself in that space, but that's something that I'm working on and processing in my sketchbooks, like all these these barriers that we run into in the creative process. And I think that's the important thing that I learned from Lisa Sonora, is that the sketchbook is not just to note your ideas and your vision and what do you want to do, but also when you run into trouble, when you run into a problem, like a block, whether it's an emotional block or a practical block, that you actually problem solve in the sketchbook.
Exactly. That's definitely what I learned from Lisa as well. And I think there's one page that I have in my head from the journal, big journal that I did when I was in Mexico with her, that I think the picture I drew of myself was like, just, I was processing. And I want to volunteer anyone in the village. I know Jody and I would love, if you need advanced readers for, please, I'll raise my hand. That would be great fun.
Absolutely.
So you're making, I can't imagine doing your own illustrations for your book. So a couple questions come to mind, and I know Jody has some questions also. Who do you see as the ideal reader for this book? Who do you think is going to buy this book? And when you're shopping it out to publishers, because that's such a challenging thing. And, I've worked with several publishers, or worked with several authors, actually worked for a publishing company for a while. And so I'm familiar with that world. It's a difficult world. The publishing world is. Why are you wanting to go the publishing route as opposed to retaining control for yourself in the self-publishing world? And who do you think are your ideal readers?
Okay, so I'll go with a question about the publishing versus self-publishing. So I did my first experience with the self-publishing. I learned a lot, and I'm sure that the second run would be easier because I already know what to anticipate. But it was really difficult being a self-published author and someone who's running your own business at the same time. There was a lot of administrative things that I had to do on my own. And if I were to do that again, I would definitely have to employ someone to do a lot of that admin for me. And I'm kind of reluctant to employing some people. I'm usually someone who does everything on my own. And so I having that, if I go down that route, I know that that's what's waiting for me, that I actually have to commit and get someone to help me out, because I can't do that again by myself. I don't have the energy that I had 4 years ago. I don't have the time. I'm not going to be able to do that in the same way. So I was just thinking, I want to see if there's a different option. So the other reason why I was considering it is because simply the distribution so I live in a country where a lot of people still don't buy books online. I don't know why that is, but there's something here that people, if they don't walk into a bookstore and see the book on a shelf or in a library, they're not even going to know that it exists. They're not even going to know that they can buy it. And when you ask people, so people ask me like, oh, can I buy the book from you and we can meet downtown? And I'm like, no, because I don't have those books, because, I don't have like a case full of books in my home. They're they get printed when you order them, like they're print on demand. So that's how that works. And the visual that I have of what I want the book to look like, that's not possible to create with print on demand. I would have to print at least 1,000 copies, but probably more, in order for the kind of design features that I want to even be viable. So I want, I want some like foil stamping and really nice things that you can't create when you're working with print on demand. So it would be a lot easier if a publisher who already has a lot of these processes developed to kind of take on that part of the equation. And I mean, control in this way, I think everything can be negotiated. Like if I'm the visual artist and if I'm the author, what else is there to control? Like publishing houses still do expect you to have a platform. They expect you to do your own marketing. So you do have still a lot of control over a lot of the things. And I know it's different for authors who are not illustrators. So like they're gonna pick an artist for you. They're gonna, so it's a bit different. But when you're an artist and illustrator, so when you're a package deal, then you still do all of those things. You make the creative decisions in that way. So I don't think that would be necessarily a loss of creating creative control in that way. But more of a, sometimes distribution is a lot easier when they have, and also I have to point something out that, I know there's a lot of services in United States that take care of a lot of things, but I don't live in the United States, and a lot of my readers don't live in the United States. So when I make decisions, I have to make decisions that make sense for both my local audience and international audience. And that's really something that's a bit more complex than when you're like, working, United States are like a big market. So when you publish book only in the United States, it's still plenty. But for me, I have to think about, okay, my nation is not a big enough market. I have to think about multiple markets. And then I have to think logistically how to solve that issue.
Yeah, boy, that's really challenging for you, or for anyone who's, not US based. And that's a whole nother discussion, isn't it? And, and I know a lot of the people who publish or who want to buy books online, like in the Village, we are dedicated to promoting bookshop.org, which supports local bookstores with its money. And it's a woman-owned, and it's a B Corp, which is a, for good corporation. But in order to get on bookshop.org, you have to have published, I think it's not Amazon CreateSpace or whatever that is. And, so there's all sorts of really intricate things that a quote self-published author has to learn. It's very complicated. And I just put this Vervante in there. That's a woman-owned small press in Utah in the US that she's not someone, Cindy isn't someone who says, if you go with me, you can't go with anyone else, but it's a resource for folks who are not in the US. And she can do all the foil stamping and all that stuff, but it might be worth you having a conversation with Cindy when you get to a point where you're ready to publish, because she will do small runs and then she will store it there. So you could do something where you could do small runs of your book and have it distributed in the US if you get to that. But she would be someone to have in your back back pocket. And
Sure.
she's actually in the village, and I have some of her resources, but that's something for you to check out.
Sure.
You've got a lot of decisions to make and a lot more complicated than many people, but you've also got that wonderful sort of illustrator and writer combo, right? That's really, really special. I published my sister's book after her death a year ago, and she was an illustrator, but she wouldn't illustrate her own book. And it was challenging to find an illustrator that I thought would do it justice. It was really, really a challenge. So when do you anticipate us being able to get our grubby little hands on your book?
Oh, yeah, I can't, I don't know. I don't want to make any promises because, it's, I've already broken a lot of promises to myself and my initial beta readers. So I'm very careful now to, not put my foot in my mouth. But I mean, I hope that, I'm going to be able to finish the illustrations throughout the summer and then possibly, shop it around or see what happens. And then by the end of the year, I hope to have an answer. I hope to have an answer, whether it's a yes or no, and to see how to move forward and see what happens. So the first phase took me shorter than I anticipated, but this other phase is taking longer. So I think that it's all going to balance out in the end. Yeah. But you asked me a question like ideal reader, and I didn't. Yeah.
Yes, let's hear about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that the perfect reader would be someone who is simply in a space where they are either have had a thriving creative practice and then found themselves a bit stuck and not knowing how to move forward. So either like in a creative block or something preventing them, like a change in life, like, a lot of parents get separated from their creative practice because it's a time suck. You can't do both a lot of the time. So a lot of people who for any reason have a challenge for finding time or finding the energy. Some people have health issues that prevent them from working in the way that they're used to. So there's a lot of challenges that people have. And I read a lot of these books, made for creatives, like how to move forward and so on. And a lot of them are like, they're like a drill sergeant, and they're like, push through, push through, push through. And I'm like, I'm not the kind of person, I don't respond to that kind of instruction well. And I wanted to write something that's very compassionate and also something that's very accessible. So even to people who maybe don't consider themselves creative, maybe don't think that they can do something that they are dreaming of doing, and something that they would be able to read and just find it very encouraging, and to either make that first step or to kind of find their way back into something they used to love doing, but for any reason they found it very challenging to keep doing or getting back to. So that's kind of the mindset that I'm looking at when I was reading it. That was the person that I was reading to, and I was writing it for myself also because I found myself in this situation many times. So I was like writing what I would want to read when I found myself in this situation, and also to my friends who I know have a lot of issues with either daring, the challenges that they feel afraid, or they have imposter syndrome, or they think that because they have this very unique challenge, whether it's mental health or chronic health or something, that they can't do that. Other people can because they don't have that challenge, but because I have a challenge, then I'm less position to be able to do that. And so all of these, and I'm not going to say that they're excuses, because I think when you say something is an excuse, I think it's kind of devaluing people's experience. And I want to validate people's experience. Like, yes, it's challenging because it's not, it seems like every outside force is intent on separating you from creativity, from capitalism to family relationships to, everything. And so what we need is a support, like say, okay, yeah, sometimes it's hard, but maybe we can find a way to do it differently. Maybe we can find a way to take it in little steps, and just to encourage people to still not lose hope that they can be creative and create something that is important to them, even in these circumstances.
You're speaking my language, my dear, because I've heard it called many things. The bro marketing world, the industrial age, do it this way and you will be able to. And so part of the marketing, and this is one of the areas that I don't feel real qualified to do, but part of the verbiage about the village is you won't find any do it my way people in the village, that we really honor what I call, when I do coaching, is your creative rhythm, that I will help you as a coach to find what your creative rhythm is. And let's first talk about, how does your day roll? Do you feel lit up in the morning, or do you feel lit up at 10 o'clock at night? It's each individual circadian, ultradian, all those different rhythms are totally individual. And it sounds like you do too. I really go, back up when someone tells me I have the way for you to, be more productive, be more creative, be more anything. And so the people you want to read your book are people who are looking for suggestions for how it worked for Nela, and how it worked you could try this. And if it works this way, maybe, you're giving people permission to try. And I don't know, Jody, I'm putting you on the spot here, my friend, but you have been talking a lot. Jody is a brilliant jewelry designer. She repurposes beautiful things and makes the most beautiful jewelry. But I keep hearing, no time, I need, and all of these kinds of things that Nela.
You just muted yourself.
Am I right?
You muted yourself, so I lost part of that. What did you say?
All I said is, am I right?
Are you right about me?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, and a lot has happened since we last talked. Most recently, last week, I decided that I was not tolerating the abuse that has happened in my practice. I do many things, Nela, but I'm also a dental hygienist, and it's been the thing that I've fallen back on since COVID, and I've lost that creative balance completely. And I made the decision with a mutual friend of Kelly's and mine, my friend Nancy, who I do psychic healing with. I mean, she finally just said to me last week, how would you feel about cutting your days back to 2 days so that you're focused on those creative things that you've been trying forever to get to, and the time is running out. And so and that's part of my thing this afternoon. The doctor knows I've done it. We've done some work around moving patients that want to see me. So I went, well, next week is the first day. It'll be 2 days instead of 3. But I'm having to just, put that aside and put my energy. I also write. So there's all these things and ideas of other things that I want to pursue that are so much more important than all the focus on the negative of what dentistry has been for me. And it's all good. It's all good. So this is perfect for me. Thank you.
No problem. And yeah, I have to get you all a beta copy so I can share maybe something that I've written and can be kind of resonate with the situation, or because we all have challenges. That's the thing, because everybody thinks that other people's have it easier, or other people have it easier because they went to art school. Other people have it easier because they have a partner who is a breadwinner, and so they don't have to worry about paying bills, or, you know, we come up with all kinds of reasons why other people have it easier. And, you know, sometimes it's right. Like, I understand that, you know, there are these all various kinds of forms of privilege, and we do have to acknowledge it. And I think people who have to acknowledge it are the people who have it. And so I always try to acknowledge, you know, the privilege that I have living where I do, having the kind of conditions that I have, and not having to worry about things like healthcare costs, because I live in a country where those are reasonable, and I'm not going to stay without healthcare if I don't have a job, you know, and things like that. Whereas in other parts of the world, that may be a bigger issue, and that may actually contribute to why people don't want to be in a creative career, because, you know, your healthcare is related to your job. And so those two, if you don't get enough coverage, then maybe you're not going to do it if you have chronic health issues, things like that. So there's a lot that goes into, but what I want to say is that it's your choice whether you want to do it professionally or not. And doing or not doing professionally is not a moral choice. So sometimes I see those like the bro marketing and the bro productivity, it's all like it's a moral failing if you don't do it that way. Like, if you're not productive, then it's a moral failing. And if you're not choosing it as your career, then it's a moral failing. And I'm saying, no, it's not. It's a choice that everyone makes based on their unique circumstances. And it's a choice that you're making in this very moment. Because, you know, maybe tomorrow your circumstances are going to be different, and you're going to be able to make a different choice. And maybe the tiny choice you make today are going to bring you to a place where you can make another braver choice. So it's all good. Like, every choice is good, but you have to think about what is a choice that you're going to be happy with. And that's sometimes something that we, especially women, have difficulty choosing, because we think of what other people want from us and we put ourselves last. So I think that's also something, I mean, I expect that most readers of my book are going to be women, because I think they do have kind of the biggest challenges around making time for themselves, making time for their dreams. You know, being a little selfish, let's say, which, you know, it's sounds like a bad thing, but I think sometimes you do have to put up boundaries. Like, boundaries are an important element of my book. Like, if you don't put boundaries, then you end up burnt out, exhausted, unhappy. So it's all about the balance.
You know, it's interesting that you say this. I just had a conversation yesterday about exactly this. When I first changed careers and became a coach, I would do speaking engagements, and I was living in this more rural area at the time. And I don't know, do people do scrapbooks in Croatia? You know,
Well, it's
these
not very popular. We don't.
well, these scrapbookers here, they are like meticulous with their scrapbooks, and they would do these pages, right? And I would speak to these groups of women, and the first thing I would ask them, as because I was speaking about coaching and honoring yourself and all that, and I would say, how many of you, you know, I want to hear what the pages that you've done in your scrapbooks, how many scrapbook, they all raise their hand. And then I would say, tell me about some of the pages you've done that were about something that was just for yourself. That was something that was your own, something for your own heart or your soul. And they honestly would look at me with this tabla rasa. They had blank slate look on their faces. They didn't know what I was even asking about, many of them. And finally, and so I would have to explain, but I would get, you know, they would do pages about, one woman said they're her husband's guns. She did a whole page about her husband's guns. And, you know, my kids' gymnastics classes, ballet classes, you know, all of this. Finally, one woman, when I was speaking, said, I know what you're asking me. She said, I have a job. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. And I play oboe in the Fargo Moorhead Symphony. And that's just for me. And I did a page in my scrapbook about playing oboe. And I was, finally, that's what I'm talking about. And it took almost a year of doing these talks to get a woman who had something that was just for herself. And I've been dedicated to that. That's what the village is all about. You know, we have our, you know, live with intention areas that, you know, if you're not paying attention to these areas in your life, figure it out and figure out some small way to get a little bit of something in your life that's about, you know, your inner life, your outer life, your creativity, whatever. No pressure though. I'm not going to tell you, I'm not going to have you take this assessment and at the end it says you need to do this. I'm saying, okay, so now you have the information. Now what would you like to pay attention to? You know, I ask the question. So you're spot on with that, Nela. That women tend to put themselves last. And I even do this. I made a comment yesterday when talking with the coach, and I said, well, the whole village, it's all about, you know, helping everyone else be everyone be successful, you know, and if my win in the village would be if Nela did something in the village and she, you know, her business was more successful because of it. And this person said, well, what about you? Don't you want to be? It's like, oh, shoot. Yeah, I forgot about that. You know?
Yeah, it's a give or take. It's a give and take. So essentially, you have to exchange. And in order for exchange to be fair, you also have to receive. But also something that I notice among people is that people think that being creative means doing these grand things. So like painting a series of paintings and having an art show, or, you know, composing a musical or something very, very big that anyone can see. And what I try to kind of through examples of sharing these kind of behind the scenes in my sketchbook or just writing about it, is that no, my entire process is not these big things that you can see. It's also tiny everyday like journal entries and just noticing and just doodling and just researching things that interest me. Like take one of my favorite things is like walking down the street and noticing weird things that nobody else would notice. And so every now and then I take a photo of something like an oil like a little, you know, when the car oil kind of drops on the road and makes this funny shape or something. Yeah. And then I take photos of that and I share it with my partner, and he's like, yeah, that's cool. But if he walked down the same street, he wouldn't see it because most of people don't even pay attention. And I think that is for me, the creative process is the act of noticing and the act of taking a little bit of time every day to kind of engage with that creativity simply by noticing what is weird, what is special, what is unusual, what sparks, you know, what, as Marie Kondo would say, what sparks joy,
Sure.
you know, something that is just adding this like this glitter to your life that is not just dry and boring and every day is the same, but how can you make today's day slightly bit you know, more joyful and more exquisite by these little actions or little practices. And I think that's something anyone can do. You don't have to be an artist, because a lot of people have this hang up about calling themselves an artist. Like artist, you have to have checked these many boxes in order to call yourself an artist. Well, then don't call yourself an artist, whatever, but you can still do these creative practices and feel creative and feel joyful in that. Or it doesn't have to be joyful. That's also another thing that people think, that art always has to be joyful. Sometimes art is cathartic. And for a big part of my life, art was cathartic for me. Like a lot of my paintings are really like dark and gritty and morbid, because that was where my mind was at the time. I was, you know, battling depression and a lot of issues. And I had to kind of channel that and process that. And art was the way I was processing it. And it was in some ways even more effective than therapy, because I was really able to be honest and kind of dig deep with that. And I was doing that. Nobody taught me that. It was just something that I dove into because I just enjoyed art and it just happened on its own. But of course, now you have these more formalized processes of art therapy that you can explore. So there's that kind of avenues, but also just having a little journal, just having a little pen, and just doing anything that you're called to do. Just that little, listening to those little impulses That little sparks of inspiration. I think that's key.
Taking notes in a different color pencil or having 3 colored pens next to my notepad, that's,
Absolutely.
that helps.
Absolutely. Big fan
Yes.
of different colored pens.
Yes. And I love all your colors behind you. That's if you could see behind my thing, that's what you'd see. Well, Nela, I want to thank you so much for this wonderful time with you today. And I'll start a space in the village where we can share our art and our doodles and, doodling even. I draw little stick figures when I am on a meeting with someone, and, like yours would be with the little red bow, and I would, because that helps me remember. It also helps, all of those things. So we'll start sharing in the village. And thank you so much. Be sure and let us know when your book is out and where. We'll make sure that I'll let everyone know where we can support you. So let me ask you, what is the next thing on your agenda that you are really excited about?
Well, the next thing first is that I'm starting a new project with a client next week. So that's going to be exciting. It's going to be a little different than the ones that I've been working on now. So that's, I can't divulge too much because I signed the non-disclosure agreement, but it's going to be fun. So that's coming up next week, hopefully when I'm completely, healed from the flu. Yeah. And hopefully, in parallel to that, if I can do that, I'm going to go back to my illustrations with renewed enthusiasm, because this conversation with you has also helped me kind of find my own, enthusiasm for working on this project, which is dragging on. And that's kind of a challenge always. So I didn't answer Judy's question. The title, the working title is the Creativity Keys. So we'll see if that sticks by the time it's out, but that's my idea. That's my vision. And I already bought the domain, so nobody's going to steal it from me. Yeah. And this conversation has been so great. I enjoyed it so much. And I hope that people, maybe someone who watches the recording is also going to find something valuable in it. And can't wait to see other people's doodles and arts in the Athena Village space. Can't wait. That's going to
create a shared space for that. And if anyone is interested, Nela hangs out with us in the athenavillage.com.